Okay, so I actually clicked this footage like 3 months ago, and I'm only making the video now, which is kind of... I'm slow. Plants vs. Zombies is one of my favorite tower defense games of all time. And sadly, it's not too difficult. It's pretty easy to beat. So I figured that I'd try and make it a bit more challenging, which is why I tried to do a self-imposed challenge run in which I can plant sunflowers. Now I actually did attempt to do this back in 2015, but I mostly stopped it, mostly because I hit a wall and I lost interest, and that was part because I was kind of inconsistent about my rulings. So this time I'm setting up a consistent rule set. No sunflowers. And that's it. I can do anything as long as it's not planting sunflowers. But because sunshrooms are basically just sunflowers, like a budget version of them, I'll try and avoid those two and plant as few of those as possible. So some general strategies to keep in mind. Pea shooters are sufficient for taking out normal zombies, and coneheads as long as they're not in a group. You'll need to be comfortable with the amount of spaces a zombie can walk before it gets shut down. You'll need to be experienced in the potato mine and exactly how far away you can get away with placing it from zombies. But aside from that, it's just generally not wasting sun. That's the general rule. If you waste sun, that's a problem because you don't really get all that much of it. Alright, so World 1 Front Yard, also known as Lawn. It's pretty easy. The first level is a breeze since you don't even have sunflowers. The second level is intended as a tutorial on how to use sunflowers, and they will be like, try and plant at least 3, but they don't actually care if you plant those 3 or not. They just have a really long time before the first zombie spawns. You can still beat the level without planting any of the 3 sunflowers, so that's no problem. Now 1-3 shows us the first conehead. So coneheads can be killed with a single pea shooter, but it will take a while. They'll be able to walk from all the way of the right side of the lawn to almost up into the pea shooter. So if the conehead is together with another zombie, that can cause an issue, which has to be corrugated with either another pea shooter, an insta-kill, or a walnut. But aside from that, it's really no trouble. Beating 1-3 grants you the walnut, which is a pretty useful plant for delaying zombies. And a lot of the times in this run, I've had to delay zombies in order to get more sun, and really anything that can delay the zombies while I wait for the slow sun gain from the sun is appreciated. 1-4 is also pretty easy, and 1-5 is a minigame level, so you can't even plant sunflowers there. And beating 1-5 gives me one of the most useful utility plants for this run, which is the potato mine. And the potato mine is just a cheap insta-kill. That's really the only reason that I use it. It's 25 sun to instantly remove a zombie, which is, well, for the purpose of this run, it's pretty useful, especially since sun generation takes time, so removing a buckethead, for instance, early on can become important. 1-6 introduces one of the first problems in this run, which is the pole vault zombie, which has increased toughness, and it runs faster until it's used its pole to vault. And because of this, it can easily survive all the way up to the pea shooter you have and just jump over it. So in order to avoid this, you'll have to set up something that it can jump over, or just hit it with extra firepower with a second pea shooter. A good strategy I've found is that you can plant a potato mine in front of it, and then it'll jump over that, and then the potato mine will then later be ready for another zombie that might shield itself behind the pole vault zombie. Now I made a kind of embarrassing mistake that cost me a lawnmower here, where I placed the walnut too far to the right, and the pole vault zombie didn't jump over it, but in the end it turned out fine. And I'm gonna lose a lot of lawnmowers anyways. At 1-8 I actually have so many plants I have to pick my plants now, which means telling them that, hey, I'm not gonna use sunflowers, and this will always cause them to prompt, hey, you're not using any sun generating plants, which is a bit annoying to have to check off every single level, including on retries, but I mean, it's nice of them to set up that reminder in case you actually do end up not including any sun generation plants by accident. Other than that, the level is pretty much no trouble. I mean, it does introduce the Buckethead, which is going to be one of the bigger problems later on in the run, as it's one of the toughest zombies in the game, but potato mines. I've got potato mines, it doesn't matter. They barely spawn any, and I can just take care of them with potato mines. Later on there'll be a lot more, and I can just potato mine them all, but in this case, it's no trouble. The 9th level of any world is the last one that really matters for the challenge, and it's the most difficult one. They've set it up to be a difficult level where you have to test your sun management and plant selection skills. And I do lose a few plants, but generally I beat the level without really worrying about whether or not I'll be able to do so. It's, again, not that hard. It's World 1. Now, World 2, Front Yard Night, also known as just Night or Grave, is the first nighttime world. That's World 2 and World 4. And as you all know, at night sun doesn't shine, so the only way to get sun is sun generation plants. Which, well, doesn't matter actually. I beat the entirety of World 2 by just spamming puff shrooms, because apparently that's a solution. The wiki says you can beat 2-1 and 2-2 just spamming puff shrooms, but you can beat all of them just spamming puff shrooms and perhaps planting a couple of potato mines now and then, because at night time you have 50 sun as your starting sun pool. That's enough for two potato mines, so don't waste them. But yeah, spam sunshrooms and the entirety of World 2 can be handled without any trouble at all. Although, to be noted, the screen door zombies and the disco zombies kind of gave me a scare, but in the end, generally speaking, whenever they tore through a puff shroom, there were just 5 more behind it, so it ended up not mattering. World 3, Backyard Day, also known as Pool, sees the amount of lanes increase from 5 to 6, with the 2 central lanes being water lanes, introducing aquatic zombies and aquatic plants. This means that if I want to plant anything on an aquatic lane, I'll first have to sink 25 sun into planting a lily pad to place that something on. But as long as I use my sun conservatively, it shouldn't be a problem. While 3-1 is really easy, 3-2 sees the introduction of the football zombie. Actually, football zombie appears in World 2, but the mushroom spam made it not very threatening back then. But here at Day, it's back in full force, and now that I can only plant an occasional pea shooter, it's gonna be difficult. That being said, usage of instant kills makes them generally not a problem unless way too many appear at once. Now 3-3 has a nasty little friend, the scuba diver zombie. So the way the scuba zombie works is that it swims under the water, and so all plants will just shoot over it. Now, with the exception of catapult plants, which will actually be able to hit a diving scuba zombie, but you won't unlock catapult plants before the roof. So the only way to make them go up from the water is to place down a plant in front of them for them to chew on, which normally is an issue. You just place down a lily pad and a walnut, you can afford it, but that's 75 sun to sink into blocking off one of these zombies, and it's a bit expensive, so they tax the sun game quite a bit, which means the challenge is basically starting for real now. Fun fact, 3-4 is where I hit the wall in my original run. For some reason, I don't know, because I completed it first try this time. But back then I did it a dozen times, or at least it felt like I did it a dozen times without ever succeeding. But yeah, it was easy this time. 3-5 is a minigame. And now here's an interesting thing. Beating 3-4, as customary before all of the minigames, gives you an item instead of a plant. And in this case, it was quite an important item. It was the car keys, which allows me to go to Crazy Dave's shop, where I can buy some useful things such as pool cleaners, which are far better than the lawnmowers in the water lawns are, as well as a gardening rake that can kill off the first zombie that spawns for me. Now, when I saw that 3-6 had the Zamboni, I got a bit worried, because once the Zamboni comes in, it squishes plants and creates an ice lane, which then a bobsled team can appear on. But generally, if you just insta-click early on, it won't get to create said lane and not be a problem. It does, however, mean you have to hit it with a squash instead of a potato mine, which is double the investment. Now, 3-8 sees the introduction of the dolphin zombie, which is a real pain in the ass. They managed to claim both of my pool cleaners, because they are just like pole vault zombies, but even faster, and they are in the one lane in which planting plants is more expensive, which is, well, generally a combo that makes them difficult to deal with. 3-9 was where I saw my first game over, in this attempt at least. And yeah, they managed to overwhelm me, because it's a huge gauntlet of a lot of zombies at once. But in the end, I managed to pull through on my second attempt. So moving on to 3-10, which is a conveyor belt, so really, that's not a problem. World 4. Backyard. Nighttime. Also known as fog. Standard nighttime rules. There's 2 water lanes, and fog envelops the right side of the stage. You can make the fog go away with light sources or by blowing at it, but generally I consider that to be a waste of sun, even in a normal run, and especially in one where I can't just farm sun. Either way, I've unlocked the water room, so I can plant those in the water freely, so both 4-1 and 4-2 are no trouble. But now comes a problem. Beating 4-2 gives you the cactus, which is a 125 sun plant that can shoot down balloon zombies. And balloon zombies can't be shut down by any other plants. Now this becomes an issue, because that means we can't defend ourselves against balloon zombies without having a higher amount of sun than we're allowed to have. So any level that contains balloon zombies in the future is going to be a problem. That being said, in 4-3 they do have balloon zombies, but they'll send so few that lawnmowers can handle them. Beating 4-3 gives the leaf blower, which is the only other method by which you can get rid of balloon zombies. Those 2 plants are the only ones that can do it, and both are outside of the 50 sun price range. And sadly, 4-3 is the first wall, in which I kind of had to say, okay, I have to use a sun's room, because there's just too many balloon zombies, and they'll just appear in the same lane, and there's nothing you could do about that. There might be an RNG pattern that makes them spawn in a way that allows them to all get taken care of by your lawnmowers and your pool cleaners, but if there's one, I couldn't find it, so I had to plant my first sun's room in order to be able to afford planting cacti and take down the balloon zombies. 4-6 sees the introduction of the miner zombie, but well, I don't care. I'm not gonna care because my rooms are not worth enough for me to even be worried about them being taken down from behind. So yeah. 4-7 and 4-8 are also no trouble. So this leads into 4-9, which, like 4-4, has too many balloon zombies. And so I thought that, hey, since I'm able to, why don't I just buy the cattail and use that? I mean, I'm fairly certain you can do this without the cattail, but I thought if I'm gonna plant a sun's room, I might as well go overkill on this and use the third plant capable of taking down balloon zombies, which becomes available for purchase after 4-5. And this is literally the last chance I'll ever get to use it, since you have to have the pool in order to do so. So I grinded a few minigames in order to be able to afford it, and hey, I won't count this as using a sunflower if you don't. Now with the cattail, I just shred down the zombies and made the level easy, but it did put on the second use of a sun's room, and like with 4-4, there might be an RNG pattern that can eliminate this use, but if there's, I didn't encounter it. World 5. Roof. And it's daytime, but there isn't a nighttime version of this, so roof. The roof's main gimmick is the slant, which makes it so that unless you're using a catapult plant, you're gonna have a hard time hitting, unless you plant really far forward, but luckily you unlock a catapult plant right at the start. 5-1 also introduces the bungee zombie, which is really annoying. It steals one of your plants, and well, the only way you can stop it is to insta-kill it or block it with an umbrella leaf, but both are expensive if you have to keep doing it. And it's even more expensive to lose a plant to it, so it's just an annoying tax that the game puts on, which really kills you with this limited source of sun that I'm using. After beating 5-1, I grind up a bit more cash and go to the shop in order to buy roof cleaners, because you can't use lawnmowers on the roof. Now the roof's second main gimmick is that you have to plant potted plants in order to plant plants on them. A few of the back slots will always start out potted, but not as many as in 5-1 now that you've earned the ability to plant them yourself, which takes sun. And since it's just extra expensive to plant literally everywhere on the roof, I kind of get pushed far further back during roof levels than I did during the normal grounded levels, but I do end up being 5-2 without too much trouble. 5-3 introduces the kernel pult, which is also known as Pray to RNGesus, and I like using it just because sometimes I get lucky, and when I do get lucky, I think it makes up for the times when you're not quite as lucky on account of the free shots. As for the other introduction, there's the ladder zombie, which is the kind of, it's the your walls don't matter zombie that places ladders on your walls, which is kind of annoying, but it's just something that I'll have to deal with. Beating 5-3 unlocks the coffee bean, which allows me to use rooms during daytime, and that includes the sun's room, so now if I want to, I can potentially use the sun's room during the day, but that's 100 sun for a sunflower that gives slightly less at the beginning, which is still quite inefficient and will still count as a sun's room use, so I'll try to avoid that. 5-4 wants you to use your newly earned coffee beans to plant a lot of magnets rooms, but generally speaking, even though it's 200 sun to plant and wake up a magnet room, the level is actually surprisingly easy, considering the high amount of metal zombies on it. 5-6 introduces the catapult zombie, or the basketball catapult car thingy. And that's a pain, it's annoying. It sits in the back, which means that your plants will always shoot at other zombies in front of it, if there are any, and will always shoot at the back ranks, which is where you'll prefer to place your plants, because that's where they can shoot the most before the zombies reach them. So it really just peppers away at your plants' health, and commonly speaking, you have to use an umbrella leaf in order to stop them, and that's expensive. Beating 5-6 actually unlocks the umbrella leaf, and that also means that they crank up the amount of catapult cars. But I still managed to barely beat 5-7 even with all of that trouble, even though my middle lane was completely exposed by the end. Now 5-8 introduces the Gargantuar, also known as the biggest, baddest zombie. It takes a lot of shots to take down, and you can't even just insta-kill it. It takes 4 insta-kills to destroy this one. So it's quite the trouble. That being said, 5-8 only spawns 2 of them, which is within reasonable limits of what you can kill by just spamming whatever you have at them. Now 5-9 is, well, the hardest level in the entire game. It's set up to be the final test of, well, all of your planting skills, since 5-10 is conveyor belt level. And I couldn't beat it without using some sun supplements, because there was just way too much. I first tried a lot of times and failed a lot of times without planting any. Then I tried a lot of times and failed a lot of time with 1 sunshroom. So in the end I had to use 2 sunshrooms in order to just be able to beat everything this level throws at me, because it's really a war of attrition. There's a lot of waves, there's a lot of Gargantuars, there's a lot of catapults, there's a lot of bunkies, Jack in the Box, you name it, they've got it. It's a really, really difficult level. Oh well, at least if you don't have a proper source of sun, that is. So that is a total of 4 sunshrooms under the belt now. But after 5-9 is 5-10, which is the boss battle against Dr. Zombus. And there's no sunflowers or sunshrooms on this level, so that's a breeze. And after that, I can just kick back and enjoy the fact that I've just beaten Plants vs Zombies without any... Sunflower! God damn it. Now, would I recommend doing this challenge? Yeah, I think it was actually a rather fun thing to do, and I'd love to see if someone could cut off 4 of the sunshroom users I had, because those were annoying.